everybody, welcome back to Let's Talk. I am your host, John, and today on the channel, we're going to be talking about 1964's 007 Goldfinger and its Warner Brothers 4K Steelbook that just came out. But before we get into that 4K Blu-ray review, I always like to give a quick film review, so today is no different. So if you don't want to know anything about the film Goldfinger and you're just here for that 4K Blu-ray review, you guys can skip ahead to that right now. So back in 1964, Guy Hamilton came in to direct his first James Bond film, the third in the franchise behind Dr. No and From Russia with Love. This time, the movie got a $3 million budget in comparison to the last film's $2 million budget. This was also the highest grossing James Bond film of the time at $125 million, which is huge for the time. That's because Sean Connery's a star, but not only that, the James Bond franchise is just right now on top of the world. People want to see these movies. They're entertaining as hell, and it's arguable that Goldfinger is really the one that mastered the formula and still holds up the best from the Sean Connery era. And in my watch through, this is the third film I've watched in a row pretty recently, I would say this is the best of them. They really just kind of perfected what the James Bond formula is here. Where they found the formula in From Russia with Love, this is where just some of the most iconic moments in the whole entire franchise happen. Some of the most iconic characters appear in this film. Arguably, the most iconic side characters appear in this film. So when you get into it, not only do you have Sean Connery returning as James Bond, we get the cold opening. He's wearing that iconic suit that was paid homage in Temple of Doom. You know, the black pants with the white top. Just so iconic. You know, he had it underneath his wetsuit, and he's just so debonair. And of course, we get, you know, that classic when he's about to be attacked, and then when he gets thrown in the water, the bad guy. What does James Bond say? Shocking, of course, because this movie is just filled with the one-liners. You know, they're turning up the cheese while also turning up the action. I mean, everything in this movie is done practically, and I just find that so fascinating because, you know, you can knock some of the effects of the time, you know, the rear projection, but they had to do all this for real. Like, you know, we take for granted what we see on the big screen today, and I knock it because it just always looks so artificial. The reason why stuff back then, you know, it might look fake in its own way, but the reason why it holds up still so very well is because they actually did this stuff. You know, the stuff coming out of the back of the car, like they had to do all that to the DB5, and it's incredible. And of course, you know, this is the movie where we get the Aston Martin DB5, the most iconic car in the entire James Bond franchise appears in this one, and that's honestly one of my favorite scenes in the film when he's being chased. And of course, he doesn't win. He ends up crashing the car in that scene, and you know what, again, you know, makes James Bond feel more vulnerable. He's not Steven Seagal where he could just take on 100 people. No, he's a real spy, but he's got some flaws, and obviously some of his other flaws are he likes to drink, he likes those martinis shaken, not stirred, and he also loves his women. We get plenty of that in this movie. You know, this is where we get introduced to Pussy Galore.
Pussy galore.
I must be dreaming.
Which, of course, I always like to, you know, it's funny how they tried to censor that in Britain at the time. America, they didn't try and censor it, but they, of course, wanted her to be called Miss Galore. They wouldn't put the word pussy in there, you know, for obvious reasons. But it's just funny that they were able to get around that. And when James Bond hears her name for the first time, and he's like, oh, I must be dreaming. I mean, who wouldn't think they were dreaming when they saw this beautiful woman come up in front of them, and her name's Pussy Galore? It just doesn't get better than that. And then, of course, the name of the film, Goldfinger, one of the most iconic villains in the entire franchise.
Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
You know, the lead actor who plays him, he was dubbed again. This is something that they kind of just used to do back in the day with no problem. And it works because the guy who's dubbing him, you don't really even notice the difference. You feel like this is actually Goldfinger. So they got the perfect match made in heaven between the two actors. Goldfinger is scary as hell. You know, you notice some of the stupidity of the Bond villains here, especially through Goldfinger. He has so many opportunities to kill James Bond. He just doesn't know how to finally pull that trigger. You know, this is kind of where the line from Austin Powers comes from. You know, are you going to watch him die? No, I'm just going to, you know, leave him in an easily escapable situation and just hope everything went according to plan. What? Like, what's the big deal? That's kind of what Goldfinger is always doing. You know, he puts him in these situations so he could just solve all his problems because this is the guy who's going to take him down. He's got a pretty foolproof plan here, but of course, he just cannot stop himself. I love the scene, too, where James Bond is underneath, you know, the moving pool table and everything, and you know how Goldfinger's got this whole setup, and he's gonna explain to them how he's gonna rob Fort Knox and everything. And I just love it when like everything's moving around. You can hear all the other villains going, "What are you doing, Goldfinger? What's going on here?" Like just ridiculous stuff, just the 1960s cheese. And you know what? I absolutely love that stuff. I enjoy that stuff in this movie. You know, Bond spanking the girl's ass. Obviously, that doesn't hold up today, but when you watch these movies, you put yourself in a time capsule. I still think it really holds up. You know, obviously the girl being painted gold is another one of the most iconic images in the entire franchise. And I really enjoyed rewatching Goldfinger this time around. I just thought it was an absolute blast. The score is fantastic, as you would imagine. Yeah, it checks a lot of the James Bond formula boxes, but I think for all the right reasons. It's very hard to find really any flaws other than just, you know, some of the stuff of the time, which unfortunately you just can't get past. You know, you're not going to make that stuff better, but would you want to? That's really a part of like the Sean Connery Bond films. Like the real appeal of them is to go back and look at these movies from the 1960s and see where the origins of this great franchise really got started. And that's why I truly did enjoy going back and rewatching Goldfinger, and I can recommend that to you. Maybe you want to check it out on this new 4K Blu-ray that we're going to talk about right now, though.
Goldfinger.
Well, here it is, right in this beautiful collection that we've been talking about, the Steelbook housing. We're going to go inside and we're going to pull out the third film in here, James Bond 007 Goldfinger. And we are going to be comparing that to my old previously released Blu-ray that's in the Sean Connery Collection Volume 1 right here. When you go inside, because I didn't show you guys last time the 4K Steelbook from Russia with Love, you know, that was my fault. I made a mistake. But look at the Steelbook here. You know what? Honestly, I would have gone something a little bit more gold. They try and go, you know, a little bit here, but I mean, the movie's called Goldfinger. I think it needed a little bit more gold, and I would have tried to, like, put Goldfinger on the cover, but that's not really what they're going for. It's really going for Bond and the Bond girl. You come inside, one disc, hey, at least that's gold, you know, and the gold girl on the inside. I kind of would have put that on the cover, in my opinion, but, you know, they have a theme for these Steelbooks, and, you know, these are just minor complaints, but either way, it's a nice looking Steelbook, and we'll start it off with the extras like we've been doing. All the extras, like I have said, they are exactly the same. There's nothing that didn't carry over to this 4K Blu-ray, but just like the previously released Blu-ray, I've complained about this. You know, the way they set up the menu systems, I wish they would have just reorganized that instead of like copying and pasting the titles, because it's kind of hard to find like the making ofs. Like, you know, they have the Ministry of Propaganda stuff in there, looking at the locations. Like, it's not organized very well. So to find the making of documentary, which I think deserved a little bit better for Goldfinger, you know, Dr. No got the 45-minute one, and I get that. That's the first one in the franchise, but this one's only like 22 minutes long, and it really feels very bullet point-ish. And then, of course, there is a looking back at why Goldfinger is so important. This is one where I think we could have used a really new looking back, just because Goldfinger is one of the most important in the entire franchise. It's one of the most beloved. It still pops up in most Bond fans' top fives, for a good reason. This one might crack my top five now, because I just had an absolute blast rewatching it this time through. But anyway, you know, all the extras, I think it deserved a little bit more on this time around, but, you know, it's the same thing with all the other 4Ks in here. It is the same exact extras. So, you know, you're really only getting the upgrades to the audio and visuals. And just like the previous two, you're going to get a new Dolby Atmos track, but you're also going to have the original mono audio, the original theatrical audio from back in the day, which is on the previously released Blu-ray. I mean, I don't know if it's been touched up a little bit, but I think it works either which way you go. And then, of course, I'm choosing to watch this in the new Dolby Atmos track. And just like the previous two, you know, they're very good, very clear. When the moments need to be big and loud, it works. It's just not something that's going to blow your socks off, mainly because of when this film was made. It's almost impossible to get something that's going to be comparable to a 2025 modern film Dolby Atmos track. But for what we get here, I still thought it was really good. I think it's the best of the three this far, but of course, you know, the increase in budget has definitely made the audio noticeably better as we've gone on, which is actually kind of different for the visuals, because I don't think this is the worst 4K that I've watched of the three so far, but I do think From Russia with Love was actually a better when it comes to the visuals. You do get HDR10 and Dolby Vision, and this might have just been, you know, on location when they were filming, because I did find that the same scenes that weren't as good looking on the previously released Blu-ray also struggle on this new 4K Blu-ray, whereas some stuff just gets cleaned up and looks absolutely stunning. Like the night scenes especially, they really make those look very, very good. They really struggled on the previously released Blu-ray. There's a good amount of night scenes in this, obviously when they're driving the DB5 at night. You know, that looks stunning in 4K Blu-ray, like almost to the quality level of North by Northwest. It's just the 4K Blu-ray overall is just very uneven, which is kind of like the worst thing in a 4K Blu-ray, unfortunately, is like when some scenes can look a little bit muddy and like a little off, and then you cut and then the next scene looks absolutely beautiful. It can even happen in the same scene. I remember this same exact issue in the Blu-ray, so when it carries over to the 4K, I know it's just the source material, and there's just no way we can make that scene look any better than it does right now, unless we can just like turn back the hands of time and bring a camera from now back then. It's just not going to happen. So you can't really blame the 4K Blu-ray that much. it's just obvious, like, when you watch it and you're comparing these all, like, back to back to back. And if you were to just pick one that has just a little bit too many flaws, Goldfinger would be that. It's still better than Dr. No overall as far as the visual quality goes, but right now I'd go From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, and then, of course, Dr. No as an order of their visual quality. But either way, or this is by far the best that Goldfinger has ever looked, and of course, you can't replace that quality of the film. The audio is good, the extras, you know, even though they're not new, they're still pretty good. I wanted a little bit more with this just because it's Goldfinger, and I think it deserves more. But overall, I do think Goldfinger is a very good 4K Blu-ray in this box set. If I was going to give this one a score of 1 to 10, I'm going to give Goldfinger a pretty solid 8 out of 10. And of course, guys, we have 3 more 4Ks in this pack that we're going to be talking about. Like I said, they're going to be spread out a little bit. You know, we got some other 4K Blu-rays coming out that I want to talk to you guys about as well. Still got The Lost World and Jurassic Park 3. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel for when those 4K Blu-ray reviews do come out. Don't forget the original versus remake that me and Dennis do. Don't forget about the Let's Talk Movies podcast that David, aka Shamrock Balls, and I do as well. Make sure you guys are subscribed for all of that. We also have channel membership, so if you want to become a friend of the channel, a producer for the channel, like Ben Rondo and John Doe Juggalo, you can do that. Or you can even become a channel director like Uncle V, Kevin Kruger, Nicholas Head, and Frank from Frank's Medium Reviews. Or you can even jump it up to the channel bankroll member like Mr. Smelly Potato. But guys, if you got no money to throw away, don't you worry about it at all. I just hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, get out in the streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.